at some point here.
Gotcha. In the interim, before we get more news from the Fed on whether or not they're raising rates, is a 2.5% drop in the dollar enough to make U.S. wheat competitive or more competitive globally?
I guess you could always say more competitive, but I don't think it's that competitive.
Okay.
I mean, you got French milling wheat being sold at competitive prices with corn. French farmers have got wheat stacking up. They got another crop in the field that's coming on strong. There's just plenty of wheat around the world. As you said a second ago, wheat prices were down again this week despite the weakness in the dollar. Well, actually, none of the grains paid any attention to that weakness in the dollar. So I don't really know that there's a real great correlation in the short run for that.
Do you expect to see wheat prices to rebound here? Are we getting close to maybe a bottom in this market?
No, I think they just rolled over, actually. That most of the indicators I looked at just kind of topped out this week. So I would expect to see more pressure. Well, I'm not necessarily saying we're going to make new lows, but I think we're probably going to pull back a little bit more, especially after this week close this week.
Okay. As we take a look down we have an interesting week this week in the commodity markets, and I want to start talking about the wheat market. We're off 9 cents in the nearby, and we've got a question from one of our viewers. This is from Jay in East Moline. He wonders, soft red winter wheat hasn't had much snow cover, and now we're getting cold temperatures. Is this a threat to the crop?
Right now, most people will tell you that this coming cold blast is not going to be cold enough to really cause some significant damage. The funny part with wheat, though, is that you can look out and think that something's not causing damage, and it very well may be. We're seeing similar things, Russia, Ukraine, everyone's saying, hey, temperatures aren't cold enough, problems aren't big enough to be concerned, but it is something that I'm concerned with as well, just because for the bulk of the winter now, we've seen temperatures above normal, snow cover very limited, a lot of moisture, different things of that nature. So I am a little bit hesitant to dive in head first on the cash market setting basis for my elevator sales at this point for new crop, just because I want to see how she comes out of it. Once we get into May and get a good feel for what we've seen, then I'll be a little bit more comfortable. Okay. But with wheat, we tend to at least kill the crop, whether it's real or imagined, 2 or 3 times a winter. And so it is something that we'll definitely want to keep an eye on.
Now, that being said, between a much lower dollar week over week and even the idea that this cold weather could be enough to hurt it in places, is there any reason for wheat to move up here in this next week?
Simply because we're trading towards multi-year lows would be about the only thing. We saw a pretty substantial increase in commercial or the spec shorts that you saw. So the wheat short is growing.
Okay.
And I hate when I hear the only reason the market should rally is for short covering. But the last time we got down around this level, we did see some short covering, some buying come in. And the wheat market is good at doing that, trading its range. We're on the low end of the range. If we do see some more talk kind of develop with the issues in Russia, Ukraine, perhaps some of that soft red wheat belt that we're seeing, we could see it kind of pop back up. But
470, 475?
Yeah, 475, 482 on the front month for the Chicago wheat seems to have been the recent high end where the market likes to trade up, make you feel like it's going to trade higher, and then usually give up the ghost. So it's really going to be one of those things that we have to keep an eye on, of course, but at the same time, we have that giant wet blanket that is record global stocks.
Global stocks. And now as we take a look, speaking of buying, we saw the wheat market climb a little bit. We've heard all sorts of reports out of Egypt. Their wheat buying has gotten strange in the last 2 weeks, concerned with various funguses and ergot and so on. What's driving this relative strength in the U.S. wheat market?
I think actually more of it is attributed to short covering. The funds have a record short position of close to like 122,000 contracts. They're running out of negative news, and so I think we've priced in as much negativity as we can, so they're stepping out of some of those short positions. They're not necessarily buying new positions and going long, but just the fact that they're starting to step out of those is enough to lift the market a little bit. We still, of course, are up against those global supplies. Australia came out and said that their crop is going to be bigger than last year. France said the same thing this week, and until our dollar drops, and we can get a part of that export market again, we're probably going to see the wheat market trade in more of a sideways pattern from here. I don't think that we're going to go a lot lower right now, but we don't have a reason yet to rally. So now we're going to go into that just sideways motion.
Now, there were some bullish, possibly some bullish numbers in these, that we could look at. But by and large, markets just continue to sink.
And that being said, we saw wheat drop 14.5 cents in the nearby, and we've got a question from Tim in Crookston, Minnesota. He sent this in to us on Twitter. We encourage all of you to do the same. He's wondering, with your thoughts on the projected planting acres, he's curious, will wheat really lose that many acres?
Sure. I think it easily could. Again, we took these acres away from wheat. Hard red, all the classes saw wheat losses. But what did we do? We went down. I mean, we rallied at the end of the week, but it wasn't enough to erase early week losses. So, maybe over time we can start to stabilize this market, but we went to new contract lows. Really, the wheat's a factor of there's too much in the world, for one thing. Domestic stocks are huge. Domestic ending stocks to use are huge. And the U.S. dollar index just continues to go up. We can't sell it. We can't give it away at this point. Nobody wants it.
And that being said, you mentioned new contract lows. From a chart perspective, technically, what does that open us up for here for a new range?
Well, in wheat, I've got to be honest, I haven't gone back and looked at the monthly charts yet, but really it just opens a trap door. Going to new lows, actually, it seems counterintuitive, but it actually invites more selling to come into the market because there's really no fear that this thing's going to stop anytime soon. You got the dollar going up, as you said, over a full percentage point in 1 week's time. You've got other commodities still struggling. Wheat has such a bearish supply and demand situation right now. There's no fear in selling any of the three classes that trade at this point.
Now, what hasn't seen contract, you mentioned the threat of this potential freeze later in the month on this wheat that's been growing well in warm temperatures. We saw a 15-cent rally in the nearby this week in Chicago. Can we keep that running? Is this all a weather scare right now being priced into the market?
I think it's a combination of a couple of things. One is weather, yes, is a concern because temperatures are running 20 degrees or so above normal for the hard red winter wheat area. And that's a concern because it brought wheat out of dormancy earlier than normal. And if it continues to push the wheat crop along, you could have some wheat maybe going towards jointing by the time you get into the end of the month, early April. If you were to throw some double-digit teens, or I should say teen temps, I guess most temps tend to be double-digit, unless you're in winter. But if you were to throw teens at it, you could do some pretty good damage. And the wheat crop's already dealing with 3 million acres less, actually 3.6. And we haven't even talked about in the soft red wheat what could have been lost due to flooding last winter in December. So I think that the market and the wheat record shorts, that's also been giving a little support here because what else is there to feed to the market? And so they're kind of starting to come out of their short positions, and that's stabilizing the market or supporting it for a little more rally. And usually wheat leads and oats no.
All right, so we've got a little bit more room to the upside here in this wheat market.
I think we do.
Wheat market, even with such a weaker dollar, we still saw wheat off 12 cents on the week in the nearbys. What does that tell you heading into this next week?
Well, a couple things for wheat. One, news midweek that there was a vessel of Argentinian wheat on the way to the eastern seaboard really kind of struck a chord with the wheat market. We have very big carryovers here in this country, globally as well, but domestically we have very big carryover. It represents 46% of a yearly production number. It's huge. So the last thing we really need is to be buying wheat from Argentina. But the fact that it pencils in with the lower shipping costs, which is mainly due to lower crude oil, to the eastern seaboard rather than coming from the plains of the Midwest, that's concerning. We'd had a problem with that. The other thing, too, is that, we were kind of building in a little bit of a weather premium for wheat. We had been getting dry in the plains. We had been getting a little concerned about that. We were also concerned about a cold snap hurting wheat up further north. But as the week kind of moved along, the weather concern kind of faded away. On Thursday, NOAA came out with their 3-month forecast, their longer-term forecast, had some more rain in there for the plains, had mostly normal to above normal temperatures, but normal precip, and that took some of the steam out of the wheat market, but also a little bit out of the corn market as well.
Okay, so technically here on the wheat side, do we expect another down week here in this next week?
That's a very good question. I mean, we've done a lot of the heavy lifting possibly the last 2 days, towards the end of this week. You wonder if weather might look a little different when we come in on Monday. Maybe we can find some footing. A lot of the worst news for the wheat might have been already factored in with the fact that we have these very big carryovers both here and abroad. There are some issues popping up with India. I'm wondering if we can find some footing somewhere relatively soon, but we might start the week on a lower tone next week.
All right. Well, let's